Hello and welcome everyone. This is my very first video in a series of videos I've been working very hard on to refresh all of the raid content on my channel. I've not touched raid content in years, so I want to refresh it all. And it starts right now with this video showing you all the builds that I use for my raid strategies. If you watch me in stream and you see me helping with Dark Hours and Iron Horse on my team, giving away all these exotics and helping people with commendations and all of that, we are using all of these builds in the strategies that I use. Now, this is just the first video. I've got all these strategies coming in a video as well, so you guys know exactly how I complete these raids and so much more. We're breaking everything down in Dark Hours and Iron Horse, refreshing all of the content, and I'm excited to finally start sharing this video content with you. Furthermore, if you would like to get more involved in what we do after watching today's video, whether it's get help with these raids, whether it's to join in the help with these raids and get trained, or even to join in the streams and be a part of my core team, you can do so. All of this content is to work alongside what I do. Just make sure you come and join my new personal Discord server where all this shapes up and you can get involved. Again, just to get help, join me in my streams, or just to join my team in helping the community with these raids on the Division 2. Now let's get straight into this, and we're going to start with the DPS roles in my strategies and the DPS builds. I've got 7 different variances of striker build here, so they're all very similar. It's just taking like a piece out, bringing a piece in, just to alter it a little bit depending on the encounter. And we're going to start with this first one. The standard striker build is what I call it. We've got 4-piece striker, which is the mask, backpack, gloves, and chest. So we're taking advantage of the chest piece talent here. We're taking advantage of the back piece talent as well. It's all red core. It's all critical hit damage that's rolled on as the attribute there. Very straightforward. And we've got a critical hit damage mod on the chest, back, and mask as well to increase that critical hit damage. To finish off the build, we go with a Cheska holster. This gives crit hit chance, as you know, and you want crit hit chance and crit hit damage rolled on this. And finally, the Fox's Prayer knee pads. You're getting rifle damage there, which is a bit, it's not being used, if I'm being honest with you, but it's the Fox's Prayer. I think they're the best in slot. You get damage to target out of cover as the perfect attribute. Roll critical hit damage on that, and the build is perfect. That's how you want to put your build together. You'll want to throw the grenade launcher specialization on as well for this build if you're using it like I do, because on both raids there's times when the explosive resistance is nice. You can survive one explosion every 60 seconds. Not just that though, you get more damage to target out of cover for your squad there. And it's just a good specialization. There's numerous advantages of running that. Now with the weapons, it's entirely up to you. I go to St. Elmo's, and I recommend everybody to go to St. Elmo's. You want to throw damage to target out of cover on that. We all know what the St. Elmo's does, and there's better weapons than this as well. You know, people might want to use a Lexington instead. Well, that's absolutely fine. Whatever like automatic gun you like with strikers, they are probably best on the raids, I'd say. You can go ahead and use. I personally like the St. Elmo's, and the secondary weapon I like to have a stacker for a striker build, and the stacker I choose to use is a lefty. You're basically charging up your striker stacks with this, so you get to max damage quicker with the striker stacks, especially when you're wearing the chest piece where it increases it to 200 stacks. You want to get those 200 stacks up as quick as possible with your stacker there, just to make sure that damage is being reached. Sidearm on the build really doesn't matter. I've gone with a TDI card custom. I guess the reasoning for this is maybe you could swap to this for the extra skill tier if you're reviving someone with a revive hive, maybe to get 2 charges. That's an advantage, but whatever you want on the sidearm there. And on skills, it'll depend by encounter what you do. I always start with a revive hive. That's on throughout on both raids, and then a assault turret is good on some encounters. A decoy is good on others. I always switch between whatever skill I need depending on the encounter. Now, I'm not going to be going into like the stats too much on this. Like, you'll see the stats are very low. 29% critical hit chance, 142.8% crit hit damage. This is because the content that we did recently, we did watch level 0 characters as a whole team. So we haven't even got watch levels. There's no expertise. All of the builds aren't even fully optimized. If you do have a full watch level and things like that, this crit hit chance will be higher. You can obviously amend this how you like to. You know, if you're happy with 40% crit hit chance, go for that. Or you can take out mods, put crit hit chance mods in to get it even higher. That's down to you. in all honesty, but we just wanted to prove that we could do these raids without any watch levels recently, and we did that. And this is what we're running in the videos that you're about to see over the next few weeks, and we absolutely smash it with stats as little as those. But just know that these stats will be much higher if you put these builds together on your watch level 1000 characters. The second variation of the Striker build here is exactly the same as the one I just shown you, but we want to introduce the Coyote mask. So depending on your role for the squad, you'll either wear the standard glass cannon, or you might want to wear Coyote mask with that to buff your team damage. So this is the Coyote version of the build I just shown you. Everything is exactly the same, but I took the Fox's Prayer knee pads out to bring in some Striker knee pads. They've got critical hit damage on them, and we've thrown on a Coyote mask. So we're going to be buffing the team's damage with this build. But everything else about this build is exactly the same as the previous one that I just shown you. For the third variant of my Striker build that I have, this is for when 200 stacks is probably not easy to maintain. There's certain encounters on both of the raids in the Division 2 where 200 stacks can be very easy to maintain, and it makes sense to have the Striker chest piece. But some instances, it's just a better idea to go without the chest and drop the stacks down to 100, because it's just hard to reach that 200 stacks and keep it there and maintain it. In those instances, we have this glass cannon Striker build. Now, again, the reason for this is because 100 stacks are going to be easier to maintain than 200, and the glass cannon chest piece is going to buff that damage, what you're lacking from the 200 stacks. Now, at max 200 stacks with the chest, that does win when it comes to damage. However, like I just said, if you can't maintain those 200 stacks, then this is an ideal alternative. And the build is exactly the same as the other ones I just shown you, really. All we're doing from the original standard Striker build is taking out the chest piece, putting on the Striker holster with critical hit damage, and we're bringing in a Cheska chest piece with crit chance, crit damage, and the talent glass cannon, where you're amplifying your total damage by 25%, and all damage you take is amplified by 50%. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this because you're taking extra damage, but if you get used to these raids as a team, everything's the same all the time. Glass cannon soon becomes a non-issue, and it's very, very handy, and you don't really notice that you're taking extra damage. It just makes it that much easier, and it's a great alternative to having 4-piece Striker with the chest piece. I won't say this is absolutely necessary at all, but I would say it definitely helps us on some encounters on these raids, especially when we can't maintain those 200 stacks. The rest of the build is exactly the same as what I've just shown you, the specialization, the weapons, the skills, nothing else changes. Moving on to the fourth Striker variant now. This is exactly the same as the last glass cannon build I just shown you. And again, it's for those times where 200 stacks are just hard to maintain. So you want to go with 100 stacks and the extra damage from the glass, but you also want to buff your team. It's just a Coyote version. So the same as before with my standard Striker build, I have a Coyote version. We do the same with the glass cannon Striker build. We have a Coyote version. And for this, all we want to change from the previous glass cannon Striker build is we take out the knee pads, the Fox's Prayer ones, and we throw in a Striker knee pads with critical hit damage on. And then we're able to put on the exotic Coyote mask. So we're going to be buffing our team with extra damage as we're doing damage. Nothing else about the build changes. Same weapons, same specialization, same skills. My fifth Striker build is a little bit different than the others, but not by too much, and it just adds some team survivability. I think this is very important for newer teams that are learning the raids, and it really does help just keep you up and give you that extra lifeline. It's the Tardigrade Striker build, and for this you need the Tardigrade chest piece. You're going to be wearing this, and what this is going to do is whenever your team or yourself loses all your armor, it acts like the Unbreakable talent, where it's going to give you armor back, but in the form of bonus armor, and you can have that every 45 seconds, which is great. The person wearing this Tardigrade chest piece can also get kills with specialization weapons to remove this cooldown for allies if they want to. We never do that in our team. It's not something we focus on, but it is an option if you want it. Now, the Tardigrade chest piece always comes with armor, explosive resistance, and armor regen, so you do lose some damage wearing this, but you can still throw on the critical hit damage mod. And the Striker build then is pretty much the same as the standard Striker. We've got a Striker mask, backpack, gloves, and holster, all with critical hit damage, and we've got the Fox's Prayer knee pads for the damage to target target out of cover, again with critical hit damage. The weapons remain the same as any of the other striker builds that I've just shown you, but the specialization changes on this one. We add another element to the person using this build and doing this role, and we ask them to wear the sharpshooter specialization. Now, the sharpshooter specialization will give your team extra headshot damage, I believe, if they're closer to a target than you are, which is very nice. But on top of that, it also comes with a drone, which works very nicely on the raid. So the skills that I have the Tardigrade Striker wear are a Revive Hive and also the Tactician Drone. This drone can only be worn with the sharpshooter specialization, so that's why you've got to have that on as well for this Tactician Drone, and you're just going to be placing this out on every single encounter, kind of like in the middle of the area. And if you put the right mods on and go for range, it'll cover most areas, and it just pulses out enemies every now and then. So it's like an automatic pulse that just keeps going off every now and then, which is very beneficial to your team, and they can see enemies come before they even spawn in. They'll be behind a door and you'll know that they're coming out of that door, say. So very, very handy, and we get our tardigrade to do that, and that's what that build looks like. Other than that, though, other than supporting your team with the Tardigrade chest piece and that Tactician Drone, you're performing the same sort of DPS role as everybody else, and the build is used the same to kill people. It still hits quite hard, even with the blue core. You've just got that extra bit of survivability. I also use this Tardigrade build to do the diagnostics when we're doing the Williams boss fight on Iron Horse. Many people will use like Hazpro builds for this, which is fine, not a problem at all, but the Tardigrade build I feel works great here, as long as you got the Vanguard from a tank, or even without that, because you got the Tardigrade on and you can lose your armor to get that bonus armor back. It just works a treat. You got enough survivability to do this role. You can do your diagnostics, you can then be up there for the pipes when you're doing the alphabet phase, and you can support your team with some extra damage when needed. The next striker variant I'm going to show you is our 6th version of striker in these strategies and builds, and it's the tamper-proof striker build, and we only use it on a few places in any of these raids, and the first one is on Boomer boss encounter. On this boss encounter, we have 2 people use the tamper-proof build, and these people are the people that are looking after some of the doors with the ad spawn. So where I'm positioned here in this clip is the burger corner. We're going to throw a turret out, and we use the sniper turret because it lasts the longest, and that's just going to shock enemies that come out the door. It just makes them easy to kill. I won't say this is something that is really needed, but it's definitely advisable if you're like a new squad and you just want some extra support with these ad spawns and you're learning this role. So we use it on this door here, and then I'll also use it on these doors here. I have one person that covers door 43 and door 44. They'll throw that sniper turret out to shock people coming out of 43 or 44. I chose 44 in this instance. And then we'll just take cover in this corner and cover both ad spawns. The build works very well for managing these ads. And then we will also use this tamper-proof striker build on the Pfizer encounter in Iron Horse. We'll have one person up top managing the spawn points where enemies will spawn and try and turn off the power to the control room. And to do this, we use the tamper-proof build. We'll take out the sniper turret for the assault turret and throw on a Stinger Hive instead of a Revive Hive. And we'll throw one of the skills on each door. These skills will then let the person know when an ad spawns, and it will give this person up top plenty of warning, so you know when those ads spawns, you can stop them from turning off the power. That's essentially why we want this build, and it lets you do it solo with ease. Some teams will have 2 people up top managing these doors. This just enables one person, so you can use your team more efficiently without kind of like wasting a roll. You can have more damage downstairs. So that's why we use this build on Iron Horse. And the build looks like this. It's very similar to 2 other striker versions I've already shown you. The standard striker Coyote build and the glass cannon striker Coyote build. This is the same as them, just with a tamper-proof chest piece. We've got the Coyote mask, we've got the striker backpack, gloves, knee pads, holster, all with critical hit damage on, and then we have the Chesker chest piece for a crit chance, but then you've got crit chance, crit damage roll to it as well, and the tamper-proof talent, where enemies that walk within 3 meters of your hive, turret, or remote pulse are shocked. The arm time of that is 2 seconds after the skill is deployed, and the cooldown after a shock is 10 seconds per skill. Other than the scenarios I've shown you, we don't use this build, but it is very beneficial for the scenarios that I've shown you. Again, not really needed if you don't want to create this build, but very helpful for new teams looking to learn the raids, to give you some crowd control and just to make things a little bit easier. The grenade launcher specialization is used on this one, and the skills, as I mentioned, will differ depending on the role you're doing there. If it's for Dark Hours on the Boomer encounter, go Revive Hive and go with the Sniper Turret because it works great. If it's on Iron Horse, you want to switch out the Revive Hive for a Stinger Hive, and then you also want to go, I'd say go Assault Turret just because they'll shoot the enemy to distract them even more, whereas with this with the Sniper Turret, it won't shoot them automatically, so you might miss it when they spawn. But everything else about the build is pretty much the same as what I've already shown you. Which brings us on to our final Striker variant, which does look a lot different than the others. And the only place that we use this on our strategies is the final encounter of Iron Horse, so the Morozova boss fight. We've tailored the Striker build for this encounter, and the reason being, again, you can ask if this is needed. Then no, you can just use some of the other Striker builds I've shown you. But when you're a new team or you're not as comfortable together as a team or whatever, this does make this encounter easier by tailoring the build to it. There's loads of explosions, so the build is tailored around explosions. And you don't need an immense amount of power on this encounter. Everything's kind of mechanical, and you're waiting for the mechanics. So as long as you've got enough power to kill ads, which you do, you want to, well, I felt that if we just tailor into explosive resistance, the explosions on the encounter are not going to be as much of an issue, and they're not. It makes this encounter so much easier to complete. And the build looks like this. The weapons are the same as what I've mentioned on all the previous builds. Go with whatever weapons you're comfortable with. I go St. Elmo's, I go Lefty as a stacker, and I go TDI Card Custom as the sidearm. You want the grenade launcher specialization for this one though, for sure, because we're just using it on Morozova and we just spoke about explosions. Well, the grenade launcher specialization will also give you a immunity against an explosion every 60 seconds, so it works very well with the build. And then for the pieces, we've got a Striker mask, Striker chest, and Striker knee pads. We've just got 3 pieces there, and each of these you want to farm it so it's got weapon damage and explosive resistance on, and where mods can be placed you want to put protection from elites. So that's the mask. The chest looks exactly the same. We've got weapon damage, explosive resistance, and protection from elites. We're working at 200 stacks on this one because we can stack off the train very, very easily and be at 200 stacks very often. Then we've got the knee pads as well, weapon damage and explosive resistance. Now we've got the Ninja Bike backpack, which will count as the 4th Striker piece on this build. You get weapon damage, armor, skill tier with that, and you want to throw the protection from elites mod on there as well. But that's what the Ninja Bike does. It gives you an extra on any gear or brand set that you put on, and we take advantage of that with the remaining pieces as well. We go with the Picaro's holster and Bellstone gloves, and you'll notice that we keep these as blue core pieces as well. We don't have weapon damage on these to add to the survivability. So the Picaro's holster looks like this. We've got armor, explosive resistance, and weapon damage. Thanks to the Ninja Bike backpack, we get a skill tier as well as the skill haste there, so we're adding a skill tier to the build. And then with the Bellstone armory gloves, we've got armor regen, and explosive resistance. I'd say the armor regen there is the least important role, but it does work with the build well, so that's why we've got it there. And also, again, thanks to the Ninja Bike backpack, we're getting armor on kill, and we're also getting the armor regen for the one piece. And all in all, what you're getting there is you're getting 1 red tier, 2, 3, and then 4. So it's a 4 red tier build with the extra weapon damage coming from the Picaro's holster. Not quite a 5th red tier anymore, but still extra damage. And then you're getting 3 blue cores. So you're having 4 to 5 red core build with 3 blue cores. And then you get some skill tiers as well. You're getting a skill tier off the backpack. You get a skill tier off the Picaro's. So that's 2 additional skill tiers to add to the 3 blue core tiers that you get for your shield, which means you've got a 5 skill tier shield if you want it. Now, we mix these skills up depending on who's doing what. We have about 5 people, I think, running this build on Morozova, and the people that are doing the rockets and in charge of the rockets, we get them to throw a decoy on, and we'll have them use that decoy on the tunnel phases. When we go into the middle, they'll throw the decoy out to help with the mortars and hopefully take a few away from us. But the people on the doors, on the left and right door, they will switch out this decoy. Not that it's really needed, but they've got a Crusader shield that they can throw on. And like I said, with this Crusader shield, you are going to have that at 5 skill tiers. And if you bring out your TDI card custom at any point, for whatever reason, if it's a tunnel phase maybe, you can have that as 6 skill tiers as well. So that's what we'll use for our skills along with the Revive Hive. Again, as I said at the start, there's no point checking out the stats because this is watch level 0 right now. It's not a reflection on what it will be, but you will notice there's not going to be a lot of crit chance or crit damage on this build. You are heavily relying on getting those 200 stacks to increase your base damage, and then with my strategies and other builds we are using, we will be increasing that damage a little bit as well through team synergy. Well, that is us finished with all my striker variances. Now we're going to move on to some tank builds that I use for these raids. Now for Dark Hours, we don't use any tank builds. There's been strategies in the past where I have done for whatever reason, but right now for Dark Hours, no tank builds needed in my strategies, but we do use tank builds on Iron Horse. And this is the first one that we use. We'll use this tank build on Pfizer, and we'll use it on Williams, and it's a hazard protection tank build. The specialization you want to throw on this is Firewall, and the reason for that is because any enemy that's close to you is going to take an additional 10% damage from all sources. I think it's within 10 meters of you the enemy needs to be. So this works very well when you're taking out Pfizer at the end of the Pfizer encounter, and also Williams at the end of the Williams encounter. And with both of these encounters having some element of hazard, the hazard protection helps a ton. Now, depending on what boss you're fighting, if you're doing the Pfizer boss or if you're doing the Williams boss, will depend what weapons you want to use here. So I've currently got to set it up with a Carbine 7, which is an AR. I've got the Lefty, and I've got the Mosquito. Now, that setup is for when I do the Williams encounter on Iron Horse, because I'm going to help with the alphabet when we do the pipes. So I need an automatic to shoot those valves when we're correcting the pressures. So that's why I got the Carbine 7 there, and I'll just use the Mosquito to get the aggro from Williams when he jumps down, and we have somebody else shooting him for opportunistic and shooting him for the Scorpio stack, so I don't need to worry about that. But when I'm doing Pfizer, I will take that Mosquito off and I'll throw on instead a Scorpio. That's because when I'm doing Pfizer at the end, I will be the one applying the Scorpio stacks to Pfizer. And the reason why we've got the Lefty there is if we want to proc Sledgehammer at any point, we can get a grenade out, we can proc Sledgehammer by holding the Lefty in our hand. So that the weapons will depend on the encounter between Pfizer and Williams, but the build will always stay the same. I've got the Catharsis Mask, which is going to generate heals for myself when I take so much damage. That comes with armor, incoming repairs, armor regen, and we throw protection from Elites mod on that. The chest piece, you want to go with the Pointman, which is the perfect Gilligard chest piece. You get total armor from having Gilligard with 5%, and it's got armor, hazard protection, armor regen, and a protection from Elites mod on that. Perfect Vanguard allows you to deploy your shield and give a percentage of your armor as bonus armor to your whole squad. This is very good, and we'll use that on Pfizer to give the team survivability. We'll also use it on Williams as we help the person going up to do diagnostics a little bit quicker, giving them bonus armor, but also for team survivability. The rest of the build looks like this. As it's the hazard protection version, we want as much hazard protection as possible. So a Yol piece, I've got a Yol holster. This is giving me an extra 10% hazard protection. It's got armor, armor regen, and hazard protection on it. And then I've got the Bellstone Armory backpack. This is giving us armor regen, with an armor roll, armor regen roll, and hazard protection roll with protection from Elites. And adrenaline rush, just to give myself some more survivability. So whenever I'm within 10 meters of an enemy, I'm gaining some bonus armor stacks for myself. I finish off the build with improvised pieces because we want as much protection from Elites on this build as we can as well. So we have improvised gloves with armor, armor regen, hazard protection, and a protection from Elites mod. And we've done exactly the same with the knee pads. Armor, hazard protection, armor regen, and a protection from Elites mod. The build is absolutely invincible. You've seen how bad some of the rolls were there. This can only get better. There's no watch level on this. There's no expertise on this. Can't wait to start investing in all of that. Such a good build, especially for Pfizer and Williams. A very, very good tank build. Highly recommended. You want to run with the Revive Hive and obviously the Bulwark Shield because that's going to protect you when you need it, but also it's going to give that perfect Vanguard when you want to give your team some bonus armor. Then we have another tank build, which is very similar to the one that I just shown you. But this is for the Morozova encounter. On Morozova, we have a Key Tank and we have a Stagger Tank. And this is the build I'll use for both of those roles. It's another invincible build. It's just tailored for the Morozova encounter over what you'd use for Williams or Pfizer, because there's no hazard protection needed here, which means you change the build around a little bit. You can see I'm still going with the firewall specialization. I guess this could be changed, it's not that important. But again, it gives your team extra damage to Morozova when you want to do some damage to her to start like a tunnel phase, I guess. But if you really want to, you could go grenade launcher specialization maybe to survive an explosion. But then that's not even needed either, because this build is absolutely incredible, and you forget that you even take damage when it's on. So I have the firewall specialization for my team. The weapon setup there, I go Mosquito because of the way that I'm going to manage Morozova when I am the Stagger Tank. Part of the Morozova encounter is that she's going to be firing a rocket, and if you are the Stagger Tank, you're going to stop her from firing that rocket. And to do that, you normally use a Ravenous, but we don't use a Ravenous just in case there's teams learning this for the first time and you don't have it, which is the exotic that you get on the Iron Horse raid. So we'll go Mosquito. We'll pair this Mosquito up, and we'll switch the Revive Hive out for a Stinger Hive, and we use the Stinger Hive and Mosquito to manage Morozova, keeping her attention all the time, dropping the Stinger Hive when she's about to use the rocket to stagger her. And that's how we use this on the Stagger version. If I was going to be Key Tank with this build, I'd just take the Mosquito out and I'd throw on the Scorpio shotgun. That's the only adjustment I'd make for the Stagger version. So because of that, we have, sorry, for the Key version. So because of that, we just have the one build for Stagger and Key, because they'll do the same thing for the role, just switching out the Mosquito when you need to. And obviously on the Key Tank, I'd go back to Revive Hive. The rest of the build looks very similar, but there are changes. We go for the Catharsis Mask, which is exactly the same with protection from elites, and we've still got a perfect Pointman chest piece. The difference on this one is we're having armor regen and explosive resistance instead of hazard protection. Still going with the protection from elites mod. Then we keep Bellstone on the build. You can see I've got Bellstone gloves here. That gives us some armor regen, armor regen again, and explosive resistance instead of hazard protection. And instead of Jarl, we're gonna go instead Lengmo. So the reason we went Jarl on the other version of the build was for the hazard protection. Lengmo gives you 20% explosive resistance. So with that, you want armor, explosive resistance, and armor regen on it, with adrenaline rush and protection from elites as the mod. That can be quite a hard farm. If you are going to drop one of those attributes, go armor regen, make sure you got explosive resistance, armor, and adrenaline rush. The last two pieces on the build are again improvised pieces. I've got an improvised holster that's giving me armor, explosive resistance, armor regen, and protection from elites as the mod. And then the knee pads, the improvised knee pads, we've got armor, explosive resistance, armor regen, and protection from elites as a mod. And that's the Key Stagger Tank build for Morozova. And again, you can see like with the Striker build that we did for Morozova earlier, we are really focusing on explosive resistance so they don't become an issue. And this build, even with the low rolls and without the watch levels and no expertise, it's like that Morozova is no match for this build. The green lasers can be on you, you can have explosions on you, you can have all sorts. She's staying up all the time. The Catharsis heals are perfect, and if you do go down, you do have the Reviver Hive to get you back up, but I can't remember the last time I needed to use that. And again, it's the Bulwark shield there. You'll be proccing Vanguard for people, and you'll also need it to protect yourself at times. You might ask, why would you have Vanguard on both the Key and the Stagger Tank? Now, my only answer to that is sometimes if you're staggering Morozova, you might forget to proc it, or if you're doing the keys, you might forget. Just back each other up with Vanguard for your team this way and make sure it's always out when it's available. But there is a shout for one of you to take this off, and instead of having perfect Vanguard on, you could throw in a Tardigrade to give your team some more survivability. That's also a good shout. It would mean dropping the Catharsis Mask though, so you'd have to test that out and make sure that yourself's got enough survivability. Moving on now, and we're going to move on to two healer builds that I use for raids on the Division 2 currently, starting with what I call the standard healer build. We've been using a build like this for years. It's a future initiative healer build, and it just does the job. It's great, but more recently, I've started using a new healer build that I think just performs so much better. So good, in fact, I very rarely use this future initiative healer build. In fact, the only time I use this version of the build now is for the Pfizer encounter on Iron Horse and the Morozova encounter on Iron Horse. So I use it for the control room and Morrows Over, and that's it. The other version of a healer build I'll show you in a moment is what I use for the rest. But for this one, the specialization that you want is a survivalist specialization. The reason for that is for the outgoing healing. It improves that, but also it gives your squad more damage against status affected enemies, which is really good as well. So we want to take advantage of that. Weapons, we go Scorpio as primary, Lefty as secondary for Sledgehammer, just in case we wanted to use Sledgehammer. And I got a TDI card custom there as a sidearm, which really doesn't matter at all. And then the build looks like this. We've got a Future Initiative mask, chest, holster, and knees. Each one of these is rolled to repair skills, and the mods on all of the mods on this build is repair skills. There's always debate whether to go skill haste with that. Entirely up to you. I've tested it with skill haste. I've tested it with repair skills, and it really doesn't matter. Go with what you want. I go repair skills. So they're the 4 Future Initiative pieces, and the most important thing I'd say with the FI is the talent on it, tactical superiority. The chest piece will increase the ground control talent of Future Initiative from 15% to 25%, which means whenever your teammates are at full armor, they've got an extra 25% damage, which is very, very good, and why people like Future Initiative. So that's that. And we've got the BTSU gloves as well on this healer build. You'll probably know the reason for BTSU gloves is because when you destroy your hive, you're going to give everybody overcharged skills. And if they've just used their revive hive to get up, you're going to refresh skills as well, which means people can get the revive hives back. You can do this every 2 minutes. So they're very handy to have on a healer build. And the backpack that I go with on this build is the perfect setup backpack. Skill tier, repair skills, skill haste with repair skills mod, as you can see, and it's got perfectly opportunistic, so we can fire that Scorpio at some targets at times to improve the team's damage against that target, which is great for some bosses where you are targeting bosses. So we have that. Now, this backpack can be quite hard to get if you can't craft it yet. I know I don't have the blueprints on certain platforms, so if you can't craft it and you're just farming for it, don't worry so much about the skill haste or the repair skills. I guess just take one of them, whichever one that you prefer. As long as you got one, it'll work absolutely fine. It can be quite hard to get both of them because you want to roll out the blue core that it comes with for skill tier. But that's exactly what the build looks like. We have a Restorer hive to put down to heal the team, and a chem launcher, a reinforcer chem launcher to fire out to heal the team, and some fire grenades just in case we want to do a bit of fire control or whatever at some point. But they'll also work for the Sledgehammer we have on the Lefty. My favorite healer build, though, is this version, which is a true Patriot healer, and for now this still works. There's a lot of talk that they're going to be changing True Patriot, and I hope when they do change it in the future that we can still use it this way because it's so good. A lot of people calling for a better True Patriot gear set, and I'm sitting here like, well, it works great. We use this for everything. Like I said about the other healer build, we only use that for the control room and Morrows Over. Everything else we use this build apart from Razorback. On Razorback, you'll switch this build out for the drone killer, which I'll show you before the end of this video. But that's one reason why, again, we have the survivalist specialization on this build for what I've already mentioned, with the outgoing healing, the extra damage to status affected targets, but also when you are using this build on dark hours for healing and you get to Razorback and need to switch to the drone killer, you'll be able to accumulate special ammo for that encounter. And it's just a straight swap without switcher specialization. The build is the same with the weapons as it was with the Future Initiative version. We've got a Scorpio, we've got a Lefty, we've got a TDI card custom that doesn't matter, we've got flame grenades, we've got the reinforcer hive, we've got the reinforcer chem launcher and the restorer hive, and we've got the BTSU gloves as well for the same reason. But then the rest of the build is different. We go True Patriot mask, True Patriot backpack, True Patriot knee pads, and True Patriot holster. Every single one of these are going to have repair skills on them, and there's quite a hard farm because you've got to farm them with repair skills dropping on them to begin with, because each piece you got to roll skill tier on. True Patriot originally comes with a blue core, so you want to roll that blue core off and you want to throw on skill tier, meaning repair skills have got to be found on each of those 4 pieces. So good luck with that. And again, with the mods, it's up to you whether you want to go skill haste or repair skills. That's down to you. The chest piece on this build, we're trying to take advantage of a talent called Empathic resolve, where repairing an ally increases their total weapon and skill damage by 3 to 15% for 20 seconds and 1 to 7% if it's yourself, and the effectiveness is increased by your skill tier. So because we're 6 skill tier, it will be the maximum 15% damage for your team, and that's to work alongside Future Initiative, because we have a backup plan for Future Initiative as well to ensure it's still in the squad, which I'll talk to you about in a few moments. So we're going to have Empathic Resolve, we're going to have True Patriot, and when you're doing this healer role, it's important to get the red on enemies, especially when we're targeting them, like Gray, Williams, Weasel, any enemy that your team's focusing. If you can get red on them, it's just increasing that damage so much. So that's why we're using True Patriot, that red buff. The white as well, the red, white, and blue all has benefits. So it's very good. And with that said, you might want to drop your Scorpio at times. Like a Scorpio ain't always needed depending on the encounter. So you can drop the Scorpio, throw in an AR just to make it easier to get that red, white, and blue stacked if needed. That's up to you how you want to do that. But that's the build, and that's what it looks like. And obviously the chest piece there is the Alp Summit chest piece because it's giving us repair skills. It's got skill haste there and repair skills on that. It really is a great way of running healer on the raids, honestly. Like I said, I use this through all of Dark Hours apart from when I switch to Drone Killer, and through half of Iron Horse as well. Much better in my opinion than the standard Future Initiative healer build that we're used to using. But like I've said, Future Initiative is very good for the team, and if you are going to be using True Patriot as a healer, you still want Future Initiative in the squad. So that's where this build comes in. This next build that I use in my raids is the Future Initiative DPS build. And just like any of the striker builds before this, we're going with whatever AR that we want. I'm going St. Elmo's, got the lefty for stacking, also Sledgehammer, and a TDI card custom there. And the specialization's gonna depend on whatever raid you're doing. If you are doing the Dark Hours raid, I go with the Survivalist because I'll always have the person running this build take one of the gens on Razorback and use the Survivalist crossbolts to open up the gate, so they go with that. But if you're going on Iron Horse with this build, you'll switch this out to a grenade launcher so you can survive explosions every 30 seconds, but also give damage to target out of cover to yourself and your team. So grenade launcher for Iron Horse, Survivalist for Dark Hours. And then the build looks like this. We'll run the Coyote mask for obvious reasons. While you're doing damage to enemies, you're going to be buffing damage for your teammates. And we have Future Initiative pieces on the chest, holster, knees, and gloves. And they're quite a hard farm because with these Future Initiative pieces, they come with skill tier, and you want weapon damage on them and crit damage. So you want to keep farming these pieces until you get critical hit damage as the attribute, which will enable you to roll weapon damage on them. And with having the chest piece on the build, you will be giving yourself and your team an extra 25% damage when you're at full armor, or when you're all at full armor as an individual. So the chest pieces there and the holster, knees, and gloves are exactly the same. Farm them for the critical hit damage, roll weapon damage on them. And the backpack that I go with is the Grupo backpack for the crit hit damage. I would go chance, but chance is very low on this build anyway. You're only going to be getting your chance picked up from the Coyote masks within the squad, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Go crit damage instead of that. You got crit chance roll on there anyway. With a crit damage roll, you got weapon damage, and you've got vigilance as the talent, increasing your total weapon damage by 25% as long as you don't take damage yourself. And that's the build. It actually hits very, very hard. Even though you're lacking crit chance and crit damage on the build, it does hit very hard. And the skills, just like with the striker builds earlier, go revive hive and whatever skill you need for the encounter. So I have it by default set as an assault turret. I just have 2 more builds to show you now to complete all of my builds that I use for the raids on the Division 2. And we've already spoke about this one while talking about the healer ones. This is going to be the drone killer build, and it's only ever used on Dark Hours for the Razorback encounter. You're going to be on a generator, you'll be using your crossbow here to open a gate, you'll be using the jammer pulse to destroy the drones, and this is really going to be your job for the whole of the Razorback encounter, just making sure you've got the jammer pulse ready for when drones spawn and you can destroy all of them with your pulse. And this is what the build looks like. It's very easy to put together, but depending on how powerful you are in terms of watch level, expertise, will depend on how you want to build this build, really. There's different things you can do with a drone killer build, but this is based from somebody that's got 0 watch level, no expertise, and they need that extra skill damage from somewhere, which is why we're going glass cannon on the chest piece. You'll notice that maybe we've got a wyvern chest for the drone killer build here. It's got skill damage because wyvern. It's got skill damage as the attribute role. I've got repair skills on there being the least important thing. As long as you've got skill damage, glass cannon, that's fine. But if you can get it like this, then great. It's got a repair skills mod on there as well. And the rest of the build is 4-piece hardwire with BTSU. We've got hardwired mask, hardwired backpack, knee pads, and holster. Each of these hardwired pieces have got skill damage on them with the skill tier they come with. And you know what hardwired does. Basically, once you've used a skill, you can use your other skill to make it come back and then use that other skill over and over. It's great for the drone killer build. You basically jam, put down your restorer hive, use the jammer pulse again, put down your restorer hive. Every time you do that, you're refreshing the jammer pulse on the hardwire cooldown. Just got to watch for that, but you're refreshing the jammer pulse. You can use it again to take out the drones. That's why we're doing it. And with all that skill damage on those pieces, along with glass cannon, which improves your skill damage, there's just enough skill damage on this build to destroy all the drones, even at watch level 0 and no expertise. Other things you might want to do to the drone killer build, if you've got that power, there's lots of stuff you can do. You can maybe have Overwatch on this build and stuff like that, but it's up to you how you want to do that. The BTSU gloves are for obvious reasons. I can use overcharge if needed for my team. If they lose their hives or anything, I can overcharge, get their hives back. It's just a nice little option to have for team survivability. We've got the crossbow there, the survivalist specialization, because we're going to use that to open the gates on Razorback every time that we need to. And the weapons really don't matter. I go Scorpio for no reason at all, really. I can just shoot my Scorpio from a distance at enemies when I've got a few seconds just standing on the generator. Go with whatever weapons that you want, but the Restorer Hive there and the Jammer Pulse, very important for the rest of the build, and that's what my drone killer build looks like. And then finally, the last build that we use in our raid strategies for great team synergy and to improve damage a lot. This build very, very important, and I like it a lot. I've used Overwatch opportunistic on my raids strategies ever since the first Dark Hours raid came out, and I still use it today. A lot of people think it's not needed, and it's not to a degree. Like, with all the power we have now, with all the experience you might have with the raids, this isn't needed. You can fly through it with 8 striker builds if you want to. You don't even need a healer. However, when you are still starting out, if you're fresh to the game or not experienced with raids, this build's going to help you and your team a lot with the extra damage that it's going to give you. So let me go through this, and we use this build from start to finish on pretty much both raids. I know we use it all through Dark Hours, and I think it's only Morozova that we don't use it on Iron Horse. Maybe Buddy and Lucy we take it off as well. But you'll see all that in my full raid strategies when I put them out there. You'll see how each of these builds work and get full gameplay of it. But the build looks like this. We've got the Firewall specialization. Now, why we go Firewall is, again, I'll position myself on some encounters where I'm within 10 meters of an enemy to give my team extra damage. So that works for it. But there's arguments for other specializations if you wanted to use other ones. But that's why I throw it on this build. And in the weapons, I use an assault rifle, whichever assault rifle you like. And I go with the Carbine 7 because I like it. And I lose a bit of damage here. This build's all about team damage and team DPS support. It's giving my team extra damage. So the talent I go with on this Carbine 7 is Vindictive, where when you kill an enemy with a status effect applied, it grants you and all allies within 15 meters 16% critical hit chance and 16% critical hit damage for 20 seconds. This works better on some encounters than others, don't get me wrong, but I think it's very nice to have. So I'll go with an assault rifle with Vindictive. It's got damage to target out of cover on there as well. But dropping a bit of my damage for the team's sake at times works well. I have the Scorpio as the secondary, and the reason why you want a Scorpio for this build is because how you use this build is basically you want to apply a status on a target, and the Scorpio does great. You can get a status effect on a target. Once you've done that, once that target dies, it gives you and your whole squad the ongoing directive round, so you all get extra damage. So what I try and do is use the Scorpio to set the status. I'll then switch to the Vindictive, so when that target dies, I get those special rounds in this, and then this is then going to proc the ongoing directive. Then this will then put status on enemies, so I won't need to use the Scorpio. It's great. Now there's some encounters where I will just use the Scorpio for my team because they want the Scorpio buffs, but for many encounters the healer will be doing that, and we'll kind of like discuss between ourselves when the healer's using the Scorpio and when the ongoing directive is. And when the healer's sorting it, that's what you want to try and do. Switch the status to your Carbine 7 assault rifle, so you are putting the OD mark on with your assault rifle, meaning you can then use this as a DPS build and just keep killing stuff and keep on proccing ongoing directive for you and your squad for the extra damage. That's how I use those weapons. Now the sidearm there, TDI card custom, really doesn't matter, as we keep on saying. But the build looks like this. We have 4 pieces of ongoing directive: mask, gloves, knees, and holster. I'm sure you know what ongoing directive does, but each piece is going to be rolled to critical hit damage and weapon damage, and where a mod can go, you want to put critical hit damage, and that's those 4 pieces covered. We don't need the backpack, we don't need the gloves, because with the backpack and gloves, we're going to turn this into an Overwatch opportunistic build, which is what we just discussed. So on my chest piece, I've got a Gruppo chest, crit hit damage for the Gruppo, weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage mod there, and Overwatch. I'm going to try and be in cover all the time with this build, because if I am, I'm going to give myself and my team extra weapon damage and skill damage of 12% with the Overwatch talent, further buffing my team's damage, which is what I'm trying to do with this build. And then on the backpack, we've got the named setup backpack. It can be quite hard to get this because you want to have crit chance, crit damage already rolled, so you can take off the blue core to throw on weapon damage. If you cannot craft this piece, then the farm for it can be difficult, so don't worry if you don't get chance and damage. Main thing is we've got weapon damage on there. With critical hit damage, I'd say most important. If you can get both, get both. For crit damage mod, and it's having perfectly opportunistic on there, because as I discussed, between you and your healer, sometimes the healer will be using a Scorpio to buff your team's damage on target. Sometimes you'll be doing it, and when you're doing it, you'll use the Scorpio to get the Scorpio procs on the target, but you also want to proc perfectly opportunistic, so that's even more damage, and enemies will be taking 15% more damage from all sources when you shoot them with your Scorpio and the team focuses them, so it improves the damage tenfold. It's incredible, and that's why you want to go with opportunistic on the backpack to support your healer with their opportunistic as well when they have it. So other than the backpack, it's a pretty easy build to throw together. The skills, just like with all my other DPS builds, Revive Hive and any skill needed for the encounter that you're on. I've got an assault turret here, but it could be decoy or anything else that your team wants to use. And that is everything. They are all my builds that I use in my raid strategies on the Division 2 for Dark Hours and Iron Horse. Again, like I said at the start of the video, when you watch us do raids on stream, these are the builds we're using. I am working on getting videos out there now after this one, covering all of our strategies, showing you how we do these raids and what we do, but also giving you the perspective of every single person that I use in a raid, so you can see each of the 8 roles on both of the raids. There's so much content to come, and I can't wait to get all this out there. We've done a lot of work on this, but yeah, I hope this video has been helpful. If you are looking to join my stream team and help with raids, you want to put a few of these together to jump in with me, but also if you just want to join my team to be a part of other teams and help our community, a few of these builds will be needed for that as well. So I'm glad I could finally get it out there. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, comment down below. That's going to help the algorithm get this out to more people, and be sure to join our community. Whether it's that you need help with these raids or you want to join my team and help others, it's the place to be. All of that is linked down below in the video description, along with any other content. Thank you for watching today. Until next time, take care and peace out.